everyone involved in the Oak Island universe is that type of person. You guys, I can tell, you're that type of person. You hear a story like this, you latch onto it like a dog, and you're just like, let's go. And yes, it's frustrating. And yes, you want it to be solved tomorrow. And yes, who doesn't want to find a chest of gold? Of course we do. Of course, everyone does. But it doesn't work like that sometimes. These things are hard. And so it's taking what it's taking. And that is, in this case, 10 years.
Right. How does it affect us in changing of the history or getting down to the nitty-gritty of the history?
It won't change history. It will explain.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you. That's what I was
it will explain parts of North American history you've never thought about.
See, I can't. The History Channel could not have come up with a better teaser than we just did right here. So I tell you what, stay tuned, folks, because this is going to be a good one. I can't wait.
This is Robert Clotworthy, the narrator of The Curse of Oak Island. And I have a question for you. Could it be that you are listening to The Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream?
This is a top pocket find, mate, for sure.
Hey everybody, Jeff here with the Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream, and tonight with co-host Jeff Babineau, we are going to be diving into Beyond Oak Island. Jeff, how you doing tonight?
Great, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I mean, this has been a heck of a week. This is the third show in a row, third night in a row. And it's been great. I mean, everybody's like, how can you do that? I said, I don't know. I just make it happen, right? So
it's all the huge money you're making, Jeff.
Yeah. It's all the piles of cash I keep dragging in. That's for sure. Yeah. Well, folks, I tell you what, we've got a great show for you tonight. We are going to be talking about Beyond Oak Island, episode number 9 of season 3, the Lost Cache of Cornwallis. And this was on just last Tuesday night, right after Oak Island was on, as you well know. And they had that's what I love about the Beyond Oak Island show, is the simple fact that I get an education. Almost every single show that has come on, whether it be the very first one with our friend Christian Roper, who was talking about John Lafitte, the privateer, all the way up till tonight's show, where we're going to be talking about this again. I heard Cornwallis. I heard of him. I didn't know much about him. Now I'm getting an education. So before we get to our guest, we have our guest going to be on here with us tonight. We're going to bring him on in just a few moments to help take us through this. But I wanted to give a few shout outs to some folks that are here tonight. We got quite the crowd already showing up here. Paula's here, of course. Hi, Paula. Brenda. Jan's here. Let's see. Kat's here. How you guys doing? Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. I really do appreciate it. This is going to be a good one. And Gon Diggins here too. Oh, that's our guest. He chimed in there on the chat. He's working that, saying hi to everybody. Appreciate that. So yeah, we're going to have a great time with this tonight. I really enjoy it. I did want to say also, if you like the content of our show, give us a thumbs up. Even if you like it just a little bit, give us a thumbs up. It does really help a lot with the YouTube algorithms. And click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the show so you know when we come out with new stuff. You click on that notification bell and you get notified right away when I just decide to give some news in the middle of the day or something like that. And we have our Patreon channels, patreon.com, and then of course Jfree out there, Jfree906 out there as well. If you want to help help the show out, we appreciate that. And I do have those few patrons out there, and I thank you all so very, very much for that. Having a little beverage tonight from this is out of my special cup, Uper cup that was given to me, and this came from Jess Grollo. Jess and her husband Mike, both of them have been on Beyond Oak Island. I got to meet them up in Escalaba, Michigan, and I went over to a craft show that Jess was working. And she gave me that cup, and her and Mike both signed it. And they are with Blue Laser Engraving, and she does all kinds of work. She does a lot of work for Rick Lagina. And so blue 6 laser engraving, and that's Jess Grollo. And thank you so much, Jess, for the Uper Cup that I enjoy so much. All right, I tell you what, let's get into this, and we have our very special guest. I'm going to bring him on with us right now, Matt Howell. How are you doing, sir?
I'm great, gentlemen. I get to hang out with Jeff Squared, and that's not a knock to either of you gentlemen.
Yeah, I know.
So-
And there's a Jeff in the house too. Jeff is usually out here. I don't know. I haven't seen his name yet. Jeff's out there in the chat. So we got the trifecta of Jeffs
wow.
for you tonight.
Yeah,
Triple threat.
yeah, right on, right on. No, it's great to be here, guys. I super appreciate you guys having me on, and the invite to come and hang out for a little while and chat everything treasure hunting, which is one of my absolute loves in the world. So,
yeah. Speaking of which, how did you get started? I mean, I know you've been doing this for a while. You've been treasure hunting. You're a firefighter. So thank you for your service, by the way. That goes above and beyond being a first responder, the things that you guys have to deal with. And I cannot thank you enough for that service. So,
well, I appreciate that. I'm just lucky to be able to have it as a profession and be able to serve my community. But yeah, it's interesting. I've always been a lover of history, so to speak. And it's interesting. I live in Central Virginia, and what I really consider the epicenter of American history, whether it was the landing of Jamestown, all the way through Cornwallis, the American Revolution, the great bloody struggle to maintain our union of the American Civil War, all the way up through, all the great presidents that came from Virginia, and so love this beautiful Commonwealth that we're in. So I've always been interested in history, but growing up, I live in a very area heavy with American Civil War activity. In the county that I live in, we have about 4 or 5 major engagements. We have a number of cavalry skirmishes. We have the Battle of Beaver Dam Creek, the Battle of Gaines Mill, Battle of Topotomy Creek, which all culminated in my county at the Battle of Cold Harbor, where you have about 118,000 federal troops and about 78,000 Confederate troops. Lee and Grant side by side, face to face during the Overland Campaign. So when I was growing up, I always saw these guys with these big clunky metal detectors walking around fields, kind of, lumbering around, and, in the spring or fall, and you'd see them out digging up holes, and I never knew what they were finding. But I was always interested in it. So over the course of life, those dreams move and change. I graduated high school here, and I was a young kid, and I didn't really have a purpose in life. So I had once traveled to Yellowstone National Park, and I thought, you know what? Let me fill out an application. And sure enough, these folks were like, "Oh yeah, you'd be great. Come work with us."
Nice.
So I spent what I call my college years, not metal detecting, but living in Yellowstone National Park, progressing through the hotel system, and then working for the fire department and the National Park Service. Wow. And then me and my girlfriend, who became my fiance and now my wife at the time, we decided we wanted to return to Virginia because we wanted to be super wealthy. So I told her, I'll be a fireman and you be a teacher. So we'll have all the money in the world.
Yeah. How'd that work out for you?
It's not it's not that monetary of a gain that I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But
and hard work, by the way, for both of you.
Yeah, but it's beneficial in other ways other than money. So that's been really awesome. But returning back to Virginia with those dreams, I kind of realized, like, I'm back here where I grew up. I knew a few places, and I picked up a metal detector, and that's kind of what started it. Stepped out in my parents' front yard. At the time, we were living between my parents and her parents' house, being newlyweds and building our own home at the time. And I got a beep on my metal detector, and I picked up my first musket ball from the American Civil War.
That's cool.
And I remember that day like it was yesterday. I remember where I was, what the ground smelled like, and I was like, it's like I was hooked. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like
Yep.
it was that instantaneous want and desire to go and explore. And if this is in my yard, what's in this yard beside it, and the next
Yeah.
one, and the next one.
Yep.
So
It
that's
does,
kind of
doesn't
how yeah, it caught me, right? It's
Mhm.
any great story or legend, and it progressed over the years. And because I always in who I am and where I've been and what I've done, I've always wanted to do just a little bit more or be like the next level of whatever craft, whether it's firefighting or, you know, learning about national parks or history. I've always wanted to do just a little bit more. And that got me into meeting the guys that you guys saw on the show, Brad and Ross
Yeah.
and you know over the
Dallas.
years,
Yeah.
Dallas, yeah, we'll talk about Dallas too.
Yep.
You learning, you know, bumping into those guys and putting this group together, and then the idea that maybe there's something bigger to look for than just a single musket ball, even though that single musket ball tells an incredible story.
Yeah, it
Maybe
does.
there's a bigger one to tell.
Yep. Absolutely. We're getting a little bit of a crackle when you talk. If you want to maybe
Okay.
disconnect your headset and plug it back in real quick, just to see if when you're talking, we're getting just a little faint of a crackle.
How about I think I hear it.
No, it's still there.
All right,
Yeah,
how
it's
about
still
now?
there.
Still
That's
there?
good.
Let's
Yeah, no, yep, I still hear it.
All right. How about now?
That's better. Yeah, I think we can work with that. So yeah, you know, and
Okay.
it's funny because, you know, that's the thing with Beyond Oak Island, as I mentioned at the beginning, was that we have the opportunity, or I do, during these Beyond Oak Island episodes to really get some history. And that's what I really love about it. I love to learn. And when you're on the show and you were talking about Cornwallis, you were taking us through that history of him and some of the things that he had done and his group had done. You know, I mean, his group during the war, his men, his soldiers, when they were coming through, and how badly they were treating people. But you know, that's part of our history. And it's nice to be able to learn from that. And it's some of the other Beyond episodes that we've watched. Again, metal detectors.
Mm-hmm.
We've had, you know, some of them like Donna McCauley, and Donna's in the chat tonight. Donna has been on the, you know, the show, and her and with Gypsy Jules,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they have gone out and they've done a lot of metal detecting with Maddie, but this is what they do as well. And so I've kind of gotten dragged into this too. I mean, I metal detected a little bit when I was younger, but now I went out and Gypsy got me all set up with a Garrett metal detector. So I've got mine now. And of course, while I'm out, you know, you're out in the yard, you're working stuff, and I'm finding, you know, a horseshoe. I found a horseshoe with the nails still in it. And I found a bunch of Matchbox cars and stuff. I dig up everything, by the way. I don't know,
Oh yeah,
like,
absolutely.
no discrimination. I dig it all up. Whenever it beeps, I'm digging a hole in the yard, you know. So I know what you mean. You're thinking, I found all these things in my yard. What's in the neighbor's yard? So
That's right.
you know, and you have to, when you're out metal detecting, I had to ask you this before we get into the history of everything real quick, but when you're metal detecting, you've got to get permissions. You're not allowed to out, especially in your area, you're not allowed to go to parks and things like that, right? Without special permissions.
Yeah, so all the parks around us, and I live in a fairly rural area. There aren't any parks, obviously, any national park within the United States or national battlefield or any of the National Park Service units. They're all off limits unless there's very, very special circumstance, and that circumstance is generally with an archaeologist. But here locally, we have to gain permission with our landowners, and we have to tell them, you know, we tell them what we're doing, what we're looking for. And sometimes you're lucky and somebody says yes, sometimes they say no. And that's just part of the game. Typically what I like to do is I like to find a network of people somebody who knows somebody, so I can say, hey, I know Bob down the street. He said you were a really cool guy. And, you know, I like to look for things in the ground, and I like to pass those things along. But I also like to share that history with those people because, you know, we're only stewards of the things that we find. whether that's a wheat penny from the 1940s or that's a Spanish coin from the 1700s, or maybe lucky enough for the 1600s. You know, we have to look at the items that we find, whether it's Oak Island or Cornwallis's gold, as being the stewards of those items until we're not here anymore. And I think that's really important. And I think that's kind of, you know, part of it. And that's how I use as part of my pitch when I try to get permission. Now, for the rivers where I live, there is an actual permit system that you have to obtain from the Commonwealth. It's a exploration permit. You explain what you're looking for, where you want to look for it, and there is a whole permit system of reporting and sharing what you found. And then there's the opportunity for the Commonwealth to come in and purchase the item if they deem it's historical at what's considered fair market value.
Wow. Okay. That's
so
cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And the permit system has changed and recently changed. But we work with the Commonwealth to try to make it the best for both parties. You know, because they are a non-renewable resource that the Commonwealth has, that Virginia has.
That's interesting because, you know, I know, you know, some of the laws are like, you know, I'm originally from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and in all of Michigan, with all the beach, the shoreline that they have, you know, the entire state is covered with shoreline sides, and yet there's only one about half a mile piece of sandy beach that you're allowed to metal detect on without a permit, and it's a half a mile. Of all these miles and miles and miles of beach, you get that one piece. And believe me, I was out there doing it too, you know, finding a few things, but that's it of all the state. But each state is a little different. Now here in Florida, I'm in Florida now, but down here in Florida, you're allowed to go out and metal detect most areas on the beaches in Florida, which is really nice. That's where Gary Drayton's down there pulling up, you know, Bobby Dazzlers all the time from the sand. And if it's in the water, now that changes things a little bit, but if it's on the beach, it's yours.
It does. I'm going to throw out a shameless plug, but I got to travel to Florida, to New Smyrna, and my friend Jim Tippett, he goes by Jimmy Crossbones on YouTube. He made quite possibly one of the largest beach finds of Spanish treasure, probably in the last 15 years.
Wow.
It's really amazing. A number of escudos and stuff like that. So if you guys are interested in that kind of treasure, but yeah, he had the same thing. You can't touch the water and you can't go to a certain point in the dunes, but everything else was fair game for him. So really cool stuff. But you really got to know where you are and what you're doing. You know, just stay in the up and up, and you know, it's always better to ask for permission. You know, we don't play the ask for forgiveness game.
Yeah, right. Yeah, not with that. Absolutely, because and when you're out there, and you know, and you know, when you're digging, when you find something, you dig that plug out. Make sure you replace it. Try to leave everything the way you found it. You know, don't leave holes in there in a guy's yard or whatever.
Take your trash with you.
Take your trash with you, exactly, and that kind of stuff, and then show them what you found. So. Yeah, that's just some of the etiquette of metal detecting, and I know what you mean by the bug, because it's bitten me too. I love doing it, and that's why I travel around now. So I'll be going out west to do some. Matter of fact, Gypsy Jules, and I believe Donna McCauley's is going to be there. Donna McCauley will be there on March 17th, where she's having an event in Kerrville, Texas, where I'll be out there for that in March, and metal detecting. And I want to learn from. Like if I had the chance to work with you, somebody who is a much more experienced than I am, I would love to learn. You know, that's what I hope to get from Donna and Gypsy out there in Texas, is an education.
Yeah, you'll be in good hands.
Yeah, I think so. They'll take care of me well. All right, so you got involved in the history side of all of this and looking into General Cornwallis. And first of all, how did you hear about it? I know you talked about it a little bit on the show, but the thing I like about doing this podcast is because, you know, you're filmed for hours and hours and hours, and we only see a very small piece of it on the TV show. That
Yeah.
way you can come on here and you can give us a little bit more information. So what got you started looking into Cornwallis, and how did you think there was be a treasure to be found?
So, you know, Virginia has such a rich history. Whether it was pirates. I mean, Virginia has a small number of privateers that operated off the coast, and they certainly traveled from Nova Scotia down to Florida. But you know that, or you know, war with the rumors of Confederate gold, lost things like that. There's just a million of these things. So, you know, oftentimes I find myself in this little bit of a wormhole where I'm searching through the internet looking for new treasure ideas, or maybe a story I haven't heard before. And, you know, I talked to somebody about it recently, and, you know, I thought about, you know, today with social media and how do we get our news, and like, where would I go to really get some good news? And I thought, don't be an idiot. It's not on the radio. It's not on the TV. It's in a newspaper, right? It's the written word that in the early 1900s, 1880s, 1890s, you know, there are all these things that happen that we would laugh at as happenstance events, but were very big newsworthy things. I think I talked last night about, you know, I read this article about this lady's cows falling into the river with a cart, and how detrimental that would have been in 1890 when you needed
Absolutely.
a cart to get around, and that was newsworthy that this cart and these cattle were lost in the river. Well, in that search, I found this article, this news article of this guy, Von Wagman. Von Wagman happens to live in the county I live in, and he says emphatically, I know where the Lost Cache of Cornwallis is. And, you know, maybe that was an oral handed down story from somewhere else to him, or maybe it was 100%. Like I can be honest and say maybe it was 100% false.
Yeah.
You know, maybe Von Wagman was just a tall tale kind of guy, and he wanted something printed in the newspaper.
Right.
But really working with the guys, with Brad, Ross, and especially Dallas. My good friend Dallas has been a treasure hunter and a scuba diver and a history enthusiast for, you know, 50 years. Let's go to the experts when we're talking about this stuff. And I gave the ball to Dallas and I said, I have this. What do you really think about it? And Dallas was like, well, you know, I had my own ideas, but I wanted somebody to go, you're crazy. There's no way this works.
Yeah.
And Dallas goes, there might be something to this. And that's all I needed. So we really started to put the pieces together and really examine the history of it from the newspaper article. And, you know, that kind of just exploded this idea of the Cornwallis treasure. I mean, and if you're really looking for really rich treasure stories, go find an old newspaper. You know?
You know, and I've got a picture of that. That was I grabbed from the show. You know, here was the what they were showing on the episode of the you know, talking about a concealed in a copper chest containing 1 million in bullion and diamonds, estimated value of 500,000. So, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, you're really right though. You have to do the research. You have to do the digging. And where are you going to find it? You know, like you said, it's not going to be on social media. It's not going to be on the internet or whatever. It's going to be in the old print newspapers and things like that. It's exactly where it is. Yeah.
And when we went to this, we really went to break down every aspect of the story. Like, obviously in the initial story, it says he goes to Norfolk, which is a local shipyard that would have been the closest, and everyone laughs at him. Then he goes to Baltimore, which is the next largest port city probably at the time, and he finds some captain, and he goes a half share. They managed to go in on this. But you know, working with Ross, who you know, Dallas is my written guy. He knows the books. He knows the ins and outs of all kinds of publications. You know, we heavily relied on the Cornwallis letters. Cornwallis letters is like 6 volumes.
Wow. Where did you find those, by the way?
They are available online.
Oh, wow.
We actually dove even into the British Museum, who retains all of the original Cornwallis papers.
Oh, wow.
They've since been transcribed into volumes, but some of them, like many older written English words, are difficult to kind of understand in modern times. But so Dallas found the volume when he was specifically in Virginia. We were talking about what he's doing, his letters to Clifton, which is his commanding officer. And, you know, we really started breaking the story down. Ross really kind of dove into the copper-clad chest. We really looked back into history, and we know Braddock was fighting the French and Indians, and he was coming from England with an actual chest of British guineas, which would have been the gold coins of the era.
Oh, okay.
And that's 1752. And he's coming, he has his chest of gold guineas that he is moving through Virginia up into Pennsylvania, and he gets killed by the French and Indians.
Oh,
Supposedly he buries his chest, but it was known that Braddock actually took gold to try to convince the colonists to come fight with them. So like basically paid mercenaries.
Right, yeah.
You know, so it would make sense that Cornwallis would have some volume of currency, and even in his letters, he speaks about the need to print money versus giving coinage. Precious metals, silver, and gold. Of course, gold is the biggest commodity in the colonies.
Right.
And absolutely, the British did not want gold traded in any sort of currency form. So you know, Cornwallis speaks about this. So we think about that, and then we also think about his actions at the time, and that's how we kind of really start diving into the story. For us, we have been in this story for over 2 years.
Wow.
So, you know, a lot of folks like, oh, you know, this is something you came up with for the show, but absolutely not, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you don't look for these locations. You don't put this sort of effort and work into it just for a TV show. You do it because you believe it's there and you want to find it.
Right.
Matt, is there any documentation on the British side that indicates that there was lost expenditures that they had given them, like lost funds, or that
So we know at Cornwallis' surrender at Yorktown, he's destroying as much stuff as he can. We also know he is worried about in his travels. So while he is here around my area and where our search area, he's chasing Lafayette. He calls him the boy, and that's like a transcribed letter, and that's like, I'm going to get that boy. And Lafayette, him chasing Lafayette ends up being his demise because they pin him in Yorktown. And we know that he is plundering and pillaging. I've never found an actual document that says he has these items, but from what we understand of what he's doing to the colonies, to the colonists or the supporters of the revolution, it only makes sense. He's taking trophies of war. He's taking valuables. He's taking anything he thinks is going to fund the revolution.
Right. Wow. You know, that's interesting too, that, you know, and again, it's getting this history, and obviously you've done your homework. You've been really digging into this, and you have to. That's part of treasure hunting, quite honestly. You know, you can't just go out and say, okay, I want to dig over here. You have to figure out where, and you need to know the ins and the outs and follow that person all the way along. So you have a clue where to begin. So it's a lot of book work as well as the actual searching itself. One of the things that you had on the show, you know, you were talking about the Pamunkey River, and and looking at its tributaries and everything, and we know that rivers shift, and obviously that's where you were thinking that this, it may be underwater now. There was a particular, was this a town that you were looking for that you figured that? Tell us a little bit about that and this town that you were trying to find when you were underwater. You found the brick and stuff like that, but I mean,
Mhm.
what led you to this particular spot, and what town was it that you were looking for?
So I'm not going to tell you the town, but I will tell you that the what we were looking for, we knew a general vicinity. So
Mhm.
we knew from a number of various different letters that he had been there at least once, more than likely 2 to 3 times, and at least the last time he was there, that he burned the storehouses that sat
Mhm.
up against the bank.
Okay. Yep.
We know that he burned tobacco barns and cotton barns, or basically warehouses. So they would collect all the tobacco, all the cotton to go back to England, and now they've put them in big warehouses right up against the side of the river, so that the ships could pull up and they could load it right up and go about their way. And why did he do that? He did that because he's burning currency of the time.
Mhm.
You know,
Valuables. Yep.
yep, valuables in any available trade. So, we had looked for it. I had looked for it previously 3 to 4 times with Dallas, and me and Dallas had always felt like we were in the area, but we could never pin down exactly where it was. Um, and knowing that Cornwallis was in that area at some point in time, I felt like that was the best place to start. Start with a known before you go to an unknown.
Right. Right. Interesting. And I tell you, that's one of the things that you do, also in your treasure hunting is a diver. And that, I can't imagine, you see, and I've had a lot of divers, we've talked to a lot of different guys who dive on treasures, down, especially off the coast here in Treasure Coast here in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Westrick and of course Tony Sampson, and I've got to meet Melvin Apt and all those guys work in the Atocha,
Mm-hmm.
site. So you see them diving in the ocean, and that's one thing, you're dealing with a lot of uh, um, uh, deadly things out there and sharks and just the whole idea of being out there. But you guys diving in a river like that, first of all, you're dealing with the currents that I would imagine in some cases are stronger than what they would be in an ocean. But also you can't see anything, and you got all that debris and trees and branches and everything else. What the heck is it like to be diving in the blind in a place like that where there's all this junk in the water? I mean, that's got to be terribly dangerous.
I guess we don't feel like it's dangerous. I know that it's there.
It's because you're younger, yeah,
I probably will look back on some of my adventures and go, man, I'm surprised that went as well as it did.
Yeah.
So for anybody watching, basically, I would say go into somewhere you've never been into, turn all the lights off, close your eyes, and spin around in circles. Then try to
Yeah.
find your way out.
Yeah.
It's pretty similar to that. If you guys saw the show, we do run helmets and helmet lights. The helmets
Mhm.
are simply so when you run into something, you're not going to knock yourself out underwater. You're bumping into a tree or a
Yep.
stick or branch. I mean, that's the one thing that really saves us. The lights are some days just for comfort, just because you have a little ambient light around you, but you can't see
Mhm.
anything. And maybe you can take your watch and stick it to your face and be able to see how much air you have. Those are the
Right.
days that really worry me. In fact, we had one of those days on the show that I was like, all right, Brad, like just screw your stuff on tight. Make sure that you know your air, how much we're going down with, what our plan is.
Mhm.
There's a little funny saying in the back of the garage. It says, plan the dive, dive the plan. Yeah, and so I was
Mhm.
stuck in the back, and that's we really try to stick to that. We stick to that is plan what we're going to dive and dive what we're going to plan. Don't veer from that, and try to eliminate as many of the unknowns as possible. But realistically, some of those days were brutal. Current is rough. We have a little thing we call screwdriver diving. We have these nice big screwdrivers in their bags, and we'll pull those out, and you'll stick it on the bottom of the river, and that just keeps you from going backwards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you take a screwdriver, and
Wow.
you search around with one hand, you switch hands, search around with the other, and then you take the screwdriver and you pick it up and slam it back and then pull yourself forward.
Wow.
And you may do that for an hour or whatever, but it's methodical. It's straight line typically, and it's the way to go.
Wow. That's incredible. So when you were on the show and you were down there and you found, well, first of all, I wanted to show, I had a couple more pictures here I wanted to show. You had some of your crew there, Brad, Ross, and Dallas, I'm assuming.
Dallas right there on the.
Yep. And there's so there's Brad, and then Ross, of course, and then Dallas. And you could tell, I mean, Dallas, he's your historian, and you said he's a diver also, right?
Yeah. So Dallas is a treasure diver. He's been, first of all, he's a remarkable individual. He was in the city of Richmond fire department in the 70s, and he had an accident, was medically retired from his job, and he actually lost vision in one of his eyes as a result from his accident. So not only is he a scuba diver and treasure hunter, he's found probably more items than any person I know, and he's done it all by essentially with just his hands. He said, I just go down to the bottom, I just lay there and I just feel.
Wow.
So in some of these places we go, there are crabs like ready to fist fight you. So Dallas sticks his hands right into crabs. Bow, shakes them off and keeps going. He's a remarkable guy, somebody I really look up to, and it's really amazing. I'm super stoked he was on the show. But he's a treasure diver as well. Ross has dabbled in the diving, but we haven't gotten him all the way there.
Okay. All right. So you had Maddie out there, and of course, Maddie gets to run off on all these Beyond Oak Island episodes and do his thing. And now Nicola, he has had her with him a couple times. They were in North Carolina together out with the guys there. We had those guys on the show as well from North Carolina out there looking for gold on that old dredge that they found.
Super cool.
Yeah, and so in Maddie, he's a friend of the show. He's been on the show a couple times with us, and you saw him in the little intro I had there, and that was on the season kickoff of A Curse of Oak Island back in November. But you see his enthusiasm. I mean, he carries us along with this, and again, helping us. He asks the questions that I would be asking if I were there, that I'm asking now about taking us through this history of it all. So, getting back to Cornwallis. Okay. So, the one thing that caught me on the show that you had mentioned, and I did not know this, and again, this is that education that we get. So he was defeated. And when he got to Yorktown, he found out that the French had already defeated the British there and had taken over. They were in the ocean and stuff, or coming in. And so he was defeated there, but there was a ceremony or something. He didn't show up for it, and he took off. I mean, what the heck is that?
Yeah. So typically,
I mean, what's
typically in that period of time, there was a formal surrender, much like Lee and Grant at Appomattox. They walked, they sat down, they came up with terms of surrender. And he wasn't a happy guy. I mean, he was not a happy camper. He had just been beaten by this ragtag group of Americans. He's barricaded himself in his own fortification. Now he's trapped on this peninsula. And you have to remember, too, that there's battles still around. They're still raging. There are British warships that are burning in the York River.
Wow.
While this battle's happening around, because the French are lighting these hot cannonballs and sending them into their supply ships.
Right.
So he's really defeated, and he doesn't even show up to the formal surrender. he sends his subordinates to surrender to General Washington.
Wow.
So
And
I
he just
mean,
takes off, and that's the last they ever saw of him.
well, it wasn't that he just did everything in his power to fade into existence, to disappear. Much like Benedict Arnold, which we know all know. You know, Benedict Arnold escaped execution for being a traitor here from the revolution, but him and Benedict Arnold probably went and played cards for the rest of their lives together because they did their best, yeah, absolutely, to kind of get off the radar.
Right.
And and to be honest, I'm just not as familiar as I should be as his post Virginia life.
Right.
But it's just it just wasn't part of he did his part, and I want to go find what he left behind.
Yeah.
The
So,
Cornwallis name
ahead.
isn't just synonymous with American history, but also Canadian history, and specifically with Nova Scotia. His uncle's twin brother, named Edward, was the founder of Halifax in 1749.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the name Cornwallis is certainly well connected during that era with the military and the high levels of politics. And certainly Edward Cornwallis is certainly a very controversial figure in Nova Scotian history as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that either. See, I keep learning stuff all the time. This is amazing. So you had obviously when Cornwallis was making his way through here, he was plundering, he was, gathering, wealth. And I would imagine that, he was hoping to get to Yorktown so he could get resupplied. Obviously his men, you would have to be paying them, for what their service, for their service and everything. So, but he's amassing some sort of a wealth, at least we figure so. And, wherever, I mean, what made you believe, besides the copper box, was there anything else that kind of led you to believe that he did in fact have something besides that story in the paper?
Well, just his actions in the store and in local lore, his actions of taking and burning homes. We know that, like you said, he didn't necessarily pay the British regulars, but I think that you look at any army who's ever gone into a theater or a battlefield. There's always spoils of war. I mean, I can look back all the way from the American Civil War all the way forward. Union soldiers brought home belt buckles of Confederate soldiers, or maybe a button. I've seen these items handed down to the Spanish-American War, and then you go into World War I, where you have the trench art that was brought home from World War I to the the memorabilia. Even my grandfather, who's in World War II, brought back memorabilia of the opposing side, so to speak, without worrying about getting copyright or looked down upon YouTube. But every soldier does that. Even I've seen it, even currently into our modern conflicts. And I think I don't think that changed at all. But I think what he was doing was withholding the really precious stuff. The hard part I've always had with the story is the $500,000 worth of diamonds.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Where did that come into play? That's kind of weird.
And what I think that is that's treasure legend, right? That's oral history passed down. Tell a friend when you get to the very end. It isn't Johnny has blue shoes. It's Johnny has big, beautiful, bright blue shoes that he got last week from his Uncle Bill. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's how the stories evolve. And I think that something that made it just a little more, like
interesting story.
Yeah. The bullion part. So using the copper chest part, which we know in New York, there was a copper chest, a copper clad chest filled with British currency. We know that was recovered. We know that was from a British general at the time, and it was recovered post the American Revolution. So we know that this practice happened. It wasn't just something that was made up as part of the treasure legend, because we have precedent that says that they did it. They did it. So now the real question is much like the question of Oak Island. What did they do? What did they hide? Where did they hide it? And is it bullion? Diamonds doesn't make any sense, but I think it could be things that were extremely valuable to colonists, whether that was silver or gold.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah, and it's funny because when you mentioned and they said the copper box, I'm thinking, well, the box is not going to be made out of copper. It'd probably be a wooden box that's cornered and decorated with copper sheeting of some sort. And it made me think of what they had just found on Oak Island here just a couple of episodes ago. They found a piece of what Gary found at metal detecting on lot 8, I believe it was. He found a piece of what was folded copper sheeting in it. And it had a design, a decoration on it. It was hard to make out because it had been folded 3 times. So it was only, yay big, but it had been folded over on top of itself. And that's exactly what they said it probably was decoration on a wooden box or a wooden chest of some sort. So when you said that popped into my brain right there at the moment going, yeah, we've seen that. And that's probably exactly what that was that they found in Oak Island. So that makes total sense because they did decorate those boxes in that way. A couple of the things that you found when you were diving in the dark waters down there, and was this piece right here that you guys had said was a part of a shoe buckle or a part of a shoe or something? What exactly?
Yeah, so that piece right there is actually it's probably about 1.5 inches wide. It is broken. That is either a piece of a very small colonial shoe buckle, and that's the buckle that went across the top, what you traditionally think of as what the pilgrims wore for footwear.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Or it was a knee buckle or breeches buckle. Right. So you rolled your pants up and it could have been a decorative buckle off the side.
Okay.
Without having the entire size of the buckle. It's difficult to tell, but it's definitely one of the 2 buckles of the colonial period. That one in particular is extremely fancy. We do find them in colonial occupied sites on land. Typically in the water, they're not broken. So there's an interesting question about that. And then it is so fancy. Most common folks would have had very plain knee buckles or shoe buckles. Even many of them would have been iron. So they would have had no decoration to them at all.
Right. Would this be an indication that this would have been from a soldier or not a common person, but maybe a merchant or a soldier, like military or merchant? Is there anything that would tell you one or the other?
No, to me, no. What it does tell me is somebody of wealth.
Wealth, yeah, exactly. Right. Or high rank of some sort, yeah.
Yeah. There were uniform items for the British. The Continental Army didn't have true regulation use. But this is right in the center of a trade of a very large trade area, and it would make sense that somebody with some money had a much more fancy buckle than just the plain commoner buckle.
Right. Yeah.
And that could have been a British soldier. It could have been a Continental soldier. He just came, used what he had.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, for sure. Because everybody, a lot of people jumped into it, whether they were a merchant or, somebody of wealth, or whether they were just a farmer. They were all jumping in and helping. So, yeah. And they would just, they would take or wear what they had and go fight. That's very interesting. There was, then of course you found a couple of the musket balls. And those were pretty small. So would they be more like a pistol from a pistol, or
they could have been from a pistol. At that time you had much larger calibers. The other thing it could have been is they had what they called sporting rifles, where they didn't shoot the large 60 or 70 caliber like brown best balls. So they
Right.
would have been maybe for small game, like for
Okay.
squirrels and rabbits, things like that.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But again, if you needed something to protect yourself, you weren't really picky as to what you used.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you ever measure the diameter of the projectiles?
I think they were about the 52 caliber.
Okay.
It could be a buck and ball round. Normally, you can either have a duplex type load where two balls are back to back, or you could have like a one solid like slug mixed with buckshot.
Mm-hmm.
That was typically something that they use for sporting purposes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The cool part about these, and you can't really see it, but just to the right of the picture, you can see what's called a sprue. And the sprue is where it was actually the bullet was formed in the mold, and then they used clippers and they'd clip it off. So the bullets were almost never perfectly round. You can see the seam molds, and highly likely that they were made somewhere close by.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. They found, and that's a common, metal detecting, especially in the areas where you guys are. You're going to find a lot of lead bullet and musket balls and stuff around, obviously. Then there was the button. I'm sorry.
The nice part about those is that they're so crudely made. We can pretty much guarantee them to be very, very far prior to the American Civil War.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Yep. And then you found the button.
And so beautiful London import, colonial period flat button, wonderful design on the back, and just, absolutely amazing. The cool part, I don't know if you've ever been lucky enough to visit the Smithsonian, the American History Museum. So they actually have a uniform that General Cornwallis or President Cornwallis, Washington, getting ahead of myself. President Washington wore post the revolution during his presidency for portraits. Now it's extremely small. I mean, comparatively, I feel like I'm a giant compared to him, but all of his buttons are flat. They're all flat. They're all very large, very nice buttons, but they don't have any sort of decoration to them. So this button could have been used for a uniform.
Wow.
Probably an officer's uniform.
Yeah.
You would think so. It's a much higher quality button. It's all brass. Typically of that period, we see, especially with the Continental Army, we see the intertwined USA. They were easy to make. They were a mixture of tin and lead. So you got that really rough pewter. And they were much cheaper to make than a solid brass button like this.
Right. But what's on the other side of this one?
It's completely smooth. So it is flat on the front. That's the downside to those things, right? When they're not labeled, when it doesn't say First Regiment, it's all speculation. This very well could have been a civilian button that was just a wealthy planner or a trader, maybe even a merchant.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't mean at all that it was military in any way. But again, finding these things that you did in that area leads you more to believe that the area was in fact a community. That's the thing you're looking for, right? You're looking for relics. You're looking for things that would tell you that the area that you're searching is or was a community of some sort, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly right. All of the parts to put the puzzle together.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I know that during the show, I mean, that's what you had talked about, is the fact that you were looking for the area where there was supposed to be like a dock or something, or a pier of some sort that, and so you were looking for evidence of a community. And when you got to the point where you went out the second day, the first day you found several things like we just showed. And of course, I know there was probably a bunch of things that you found that they didn't show us. There was one scene, I think maybe I might even had. Oh yeah, here it is right here. I think this was at the end of the first day. And Maddie kept talking about the many things that you found. Well, we saw 2 or 3, but I noticed right here, there's quite a few things sitting there. I mean, you got broken bottles and then this big old iron hook and stuff. I saw that and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, there was a lot more things they found that we didn't get to see on the show.
Yeah, I'm a little sad we couldn't go through all of it. I will tell you, one of the producers on the show, I'll give a little bit of a spoiler, but one of the producers on the show, after it came up from a dive, and I'm sure you guys see it, I'm just like fist bumping, like so excited. I found a number of items. We had an incredible dive, and we really solidified what we had. We found 10 times the number of items as to what was shown on the.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
I got I was like, look, I was like, I don't know, I don't feel like we gave you enough, and I was like, I have one more spot that is within this travel area that we want to go scout. We've looked for it a couple of times. We think we pinned it down, and we'd like to go put one tank on the bottom there. And she looked at me and she said, Matt, absolutely not. And I was like,
Wow.
well, why? She said, I don't have enough time to record all of the stuff I know you guys are going to find.
Oh, wow. See, there you go.
So I was like, all right, well, then I guess you guys are happy. So,
Yeah. You must.
You think that would make perfect B-roll footage for a second follow-up show?
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
we can hope for a second one, but I'm just so grateful to be able to share my passion and my adventure, my little piece of the world with
There's a
everybody.
question. Yeah, there's a question from one of the people watching. Did you find anything with British broad arrow markings on them?
We personally
You're allowed
have
to tell us.
not.
Okay.
Yeah. So within the show, we did not. The broad arrow was stamped across everything owned by the Crown.
Mhm.
And whether that was a cannonball, I had somebody reach out to me, and they were finding these little bitty ship spikes on a known British ship. I guess they lived over in England, and all of the ship spikes had broad arrows marked in them.
Wow, every one of them.
Every single one. He had like
Wow.
a whole handful, and I was like, oh, I've never found one of those, but now I have
Wow.
occasionally we will find some Rev War period broad arrow marked cannonballs, but that's typically what we've been looking for. We just haven't found it yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here was another piece here. Let's see, this metal piece that Maddie's checking out there that you brought up and you handed up to him. That was pretty cool. And I think that somebody had said something, it might have been Dallas, had maybe made the comment about something holding wood together, using as a band to hold things. Is that what you think that was, or?
We think that it was either a hinge,
Okay,
but because it is broken, it's highly likely that it was used as like some sort of reinforcement strapping on whatever dock system was there.
Yeah.
It's got the holes in the right places. It's broken.
I was going to ask you next. Yeah, about the holes in it.
Yeah, it would make sense that the other side, had it not been broken, was either tapered in the same fashion, or it possibly could be a hinge. Because the construction of those items are so similar, it's just no way to definitively know.
Yeah, exactly.
And
then you found the bricks.
Yeah.
And you said you found wood too. You found I don't remember what you called them. They were like beams or wood.
So,
you said you found. I heard you say that on the show.
Yeah, there was a large segment that didn't make it, and we kind of went through. We did find a large dimensional timber that we know is from the dock system. And we pulled it up and examined it. It had a series of spikes that went all the way down from where it was attached. So that was part of the wood we were talking about. It's just so large, so big, and the preservation of it. The easiest way to preserve an item like that is just to put it right back where you found it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it doesn't. You bring it up and it's going to deteriorate a lot faster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
But
the bricks. Yeah, you found it looked like a whole, like a wall down there that had fallen over or something. You found a lot of bricks down there.
yeah, we found a lot of bricks, and the bricks are what we were really keying into. I know it sounds silly that we'd be so excited about a brick, but
Oh no, I think it's great.
yeah, it's it that we know because of the destruction that there should have been more actual items, more pieces of building material than actual finds.
It looks like Kat's asking, can you explain what this site is? Not a ship, right? It's a old
Quarry site.
Quarry site.
So
Quarry site?
so we don't actually believe it to be we believe it to be let's see, are we still cracking pretty good?
Yeah, it's crackling a little bit, but not too bad.
All right. We believe it to be, I think it's all me, that it was actually the loading site to a town or a place of occupation, whether that was just a shipyard or whether or not it was a full-blown town with community and school and churches. We like to lean towards the later, but we're not really sure. That's just going to take more mapping and more literal diving into the site to understand it.
So Matt,
Yeah,
what have you done since the dive on the show?
Since the dive on the show, we worked very hard with the Commonwealth of Virginia to appropriately and correctly report air finds. I've since gone back and used what we have to actually start the mapping process, just with a very basic hand-drawn map. And then we worked on a number of other sites that we believe are related. We probably will. The weather, to be honest with you, hasn't cooperated really well with visibility. We dove a couple other sites, including the other dock site that I was looking for, with some really promising results. And that's in that close proximity. What we actually believe is that the treasure would be buried in a landmark situation that wouldn't have changed, that he could have come back and seen the landmark and gone 10 paces this way, start digging here and pick this up. I don't believe it would have been marked, because a marker on any river is generally too obvious for anybody, right? Somebody's going to get nosy, and especially during that period, and investigate. So that's kind of the theory to work by to start, right? Start with what someone would have known before we go into the unknown. We are going to try to work on getting a magnetometer and improving some of our side scan and sonar capabilities.
Right.
And that's really the focus. Once the show came and went, to improve our technology side versus physically going and doing. So yeah,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Kind of the best way right now. We have some friends that are working with some ROVs as well, and some not on our rivers, but similar rivers of what we're doing.
Yeah, that makes good sense, because we know that the guys that were Matt Hawley, they're out working the Missouri River, and they're finding the riverboats that went down. There was a lot of riverboats that went down, and that's exactly what they would go over in a boat, and they would do the magnetometer or side scan. They're looking for like the boiler, and they're going to pick up that boiler. It's going to be a big hit. So that would tell them that they're in the area where they can then go underwater and dive and try to find the actual riverboats and stuff like that they brought up. That's really a very interesting thing. Yeah, I see Rob. Hey, Rob Westrick. He's a diver that working out on the 1715 fleet, and he's here watching with us tonight. And he said hello. I wanted to say hi to him. So yeah, you had a few extra things that you found. Looks like there's another button there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the spoon that was folded over, it was that was kind of interesting. And you told a little story, I think, or maybe it was Brad told a little story about how they would damage them, when they would fold it over and bend it like that. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
weird. I mean, what?
So that was Dallas, and
Oh, Dal.
Dallas,
Okay.
Dallas in his years, he found a very large quantity in an area that he knew Cornwallis was in. And he
Mhm.
told me, he said, Matt, I didn't even think about it until you started bringing this up to me. He said he got on the bottom and all of the spoons were bent in half.
Hmm.
He said we found hundreds of spoons, and every single one of them was like somebody took Bennett and threw it in the river.
Hmm.
And he realized after doing research that the British were there and they were destroying stores. So some British soldier was like, it's just not enough to throw it in the river. Let's bend it in half and throw it in the river. And, could that be a part of that? Certainly it would fit the story. Could it be something else? More utilitarian? Why would you bend the handle of a spoon and a knife in half like that?
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense other than just, simply wanting to destroy it even more so than just throwing it in the river. I mean, that would have been, you think somebody's going to go swim down there and go get it or something? Yeah, that's kind of weird.
Right.
Didn't make a lot of sense. But, and then I think the last thing that they showed that you pulled up down there was this coin. And at least that's the impression we got, that you found it down there. And then I guess, so it's a match. And I was looking at this really closely. And I'm assuming this is the one you found.
It
the
is.
one on the left.
Yeah.
And it's pretty well beaten up and you can barely see. But if you look, you can definitely see the outline of the shape that's on it. So that pretty much tells you that it is a coin of that. And you said that's the first minting coin?
So that is called a Liberty Cap, large cent. Yeah. Liberty Cap large cent. So that's supposed to be the Lady Liberty and the cap of freedom behind her. And it's supposed to be on a pole. It's interesting. The original bust design was called, the very first large cent, like 1792, 93, was called a flowing hair large cent. Exceedingly rare. This was the first really successful U.S. coinage mintage. So they made like 100,000 of them, or however many they made, and it was the first successful one where they actually successfully minted coins from the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia, which is a very interesting thing. We talked about it. It's a question of where did the ware come from? Did the coin originally look like the one on the right prior? And was it the ware of the river that created that? Or was the coin in circulation? If the coin was in circulation for that long, it's exciting to me because it tells the story of a place that was thriving post the American Revolution. And that's exciting to me because that traces me back to my heritage, to my lineage, to the first Howells that came over from England in the 1640s. So this is cool because this is a coin that was actually truly held by the first generation of Americans.
Yeah.
And if that just doesn't make you proud and excited to be,
I would love to find something like that. That's amazing.
So it's pretty amazing to pick something up like that and hold it and just kind of think about
or this.
What it was,
or this, finding all these, and I'm assuming that these were all kind of some things that you had found. I think this was a picture that Maddie actually brought back with them, and he was presenting this to Rick and Marty in the war room back on Oak Island. But looking at all these different things here, I'm assuming that these must be things that you found that you were telling them about or something. And
so these items in this picture are from a previous scout of the first location.
All right.
So this is pretty cool because the items there tell the same story what you have there is a number of colonial period flat buttons. The item you have at the very top with the little slits in it,
Yep.
that is a very early mid 1600s clog clasp.
Okay.
Silver as well. The little silver disc there is a Spanish half real.
Oh, wow.
I think that's 1758.
Wow.
The coin just to the bottom is a Virginia halfpenny.
Okay.
Those coins only date to 1773. In the charter of Virginia, Virginia was chartered to mint its own currency, but didn't get around to it until 1773.
Wow.
They were held in New York in a vault until 1775, when they were finally distributed among the Commonwealth just in time for the American Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of it. The item down with the kind of cross arrow, that is a very, very early British pocket watch winder.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. I was wondering what it was. It was kind of cool looking, and I thought maybe it's like a broken cross or something, but wow.
Yeah,
so
it's
watch winder.
Yep. So you had the little winding spindles that come down and go straight, and then the little place with the circle actually would spin, so you could spin it like that.
Ah, okay.
And each piece of the pocket watch winder has a purpose on it. It has little dimples on the ends, and those were to reset hands and to adjust it. The early pocket watches or early clocks were very primitive, and they took a lot of work to keep going correctly. So that would have been somebody with a significant amount of money.
Yeah, exactly. To have a watch. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, many households didn't even have a clock or anything, and it was that to even have a clock meant you had some wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we really focused on the first area really well, and we scouted it a bunch of times. We had an idea of where we wanted to go, but conditions, you cannot tame a wild river, and you cannot predict the conditions.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
so some of the finds are kind of representative of that. Whatever rain comes and however muddy the river gets is however muddy it is the day we go to dive.
Yep.
So then have you just confined your activities just to the water line, or have you done anything on shore as well?
So with our permit, we're allowed to go to the mean or average low tide mark, because the Commonwealth of Virginia controls the land within that. If we move into anything anything outside of the average low tide mark, we now have to have landowner permission. There are a number of places we do have landowner permission, but there's a number of places that we really would like to search that people just aren't very friendly.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, we try to we present ourselves in the best possible way, politely, and we've had people scream at us while we were in the water that they think we're stealing something that was theirs. While we may be out searching. I have a couple of those videos on my YouTube channel just to document some of these interactions for the future. So, I can either make my interaction better, or I can just say, hey, it's not always peaches and cream.
Yeah. I can only imagine.
That's bizarre. How could somebody possibly claim that you're stealing something that they didn't even know that was theirs?
Yeah.
I guess that's maybe no different than someone getting upset at you for taking a parking spot that they wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good analogy.
I can't make a rationale of it. I would like to think I knew why people would be upset about that. The cool part about the permit system is if you apply and you put the effort in, you can go do the same thing that I'm doing. And you know, if you're friendly and nice, I'll even help you. Like
Yeah.
I don't have any problems with that. And
Right.
you know, I'm not one to believe that every piece that we find is mine. I believe that it should be shared. It's a shared history, and I think that everyone should be able to have um, some sort of tangible reminiscence of the past. You know.
Yep.
Now, when you're on the water, do you use any kind of like a lot of you go on YouTube and you see a lot of guys searching rivers and they use heavy industrial grade magnets for pulling metal objects off the water, off the river floors and stuff. Do you get in doing any of that?
I haven't gotten into the magnet stuff a lot. I've gotten into some other kind of crazy stuff, like most dangerous thing to this day, the most dangerous thing I've ever done is we pulled a 2019 full-size pickup truck off the bottom of the river.
Oh, wow.
And and that was in the middle of a very heavily fished area. There were balls of monofilament and fishing line floating around like jellyfish.
Oh, wow. You get
So
tangled up.
I haven't gotten into the magnet fishing stuff because I do so much diving. I find it incredibly interesting. It sounds crazy, but I would love to go hang out with that Bondi treasure hunting guy, always throwing magnets in Amsterdam and stuff. But probably my problem I would put on a scuba tank and go to the bottom and just see it myself.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
You know?
Yeah, it's there it is there. Yeah. Thinking of a large plantation might be similar to the artifacts of a small town. It could be, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, typically it's gonna be a difference in volume. Typically we do have plantation sites that we go out and metal detect. The plantation was all inclusive. You had to have somebody who did everything on your plantation. You had to have a blacksmith. You had to have a farrier. You had to have a grist mill. You had to have all of those things within your plantation because you really just didn't want to have to move all this material around. When you think about a town, you didn't have to have that. I could go down to Bob's blacksmith shop and get a couple horseshoes put on my horse. I didn't have to have the blacksmith after I imported the iron to create the forge, So
that's very true.
Yeah, they're going to be very similar, especially if they're occupied the same time period. It's just how the sites are laid out, and that's kind of what I like to think about.
Right. So as we start to wrap this up, I wanted to ask too, what's next? What's next for Matt and Matt's team of guys? You're still working this, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we're going to keep working on this. We have some other things kind of in the works. I really, after last year, I got to finish up the Jim Tippett story, which I really loved. And I really enjoy the idea of documenting other treasure hunters, whether that's going out with them or it's just having a sit-down conversation like this. I think there's so much that so many people can teach me and I can learn that I want to be, I want to get all that information and, share it with the world. So, I don't know. I think we'll keep plugging away on this story. And like they say on Oak Island, if it takes 10 years to find $65 million or whatever's at the bottom, that's okay. We'll just keep having adventures and having fun until whatever that happens.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Prometheus hasn't contacted you regarding your series?
I don't know, but if they're watching and they want to do it, I'm all ears. The fire service is a fantastic career, but I would love to take my 4-year-old daughter on adventures around the world.
Somebody just asked, what's the Jim Tippett story?
Jim Tippett is a story, and now Jim is a good friend of mine. He was walking along a Florida beach and recovered a little over $500,000 in Spanish escudos and actual treasure. He found 4, being from Florida, he found 4 8 escudos and about 20 some 2 escudos, 4 and 1 escudo coins, plus the number of 8 reals, 1 reals, 2 reals, 3 reals, 4 reals, and then the musket balls and shoe buckles. Really amazing story, really cool, super humble guy, like one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
So
wow. There you go. Come back, Matt. She's saying right there. That's Wanda saying, "Come back, Matt." So and you mentioned just a moment ago something that is exactly what I'm doing. It's like and that's why I love to have you guys on, with people like yourself, people like Rob Westrick and Donna McCauley and the folks that have come on this show, because you're teaching me something, and I want to share that with everybody that's watching. And it's like I could just call you up on the phone, or I got to meet you or whatever, and you could just tell me, okay, great. But no, I want to share this with as many people as possible. And you're teaching us all something, and that's just fantastic. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and doing this, because it's exactly what I think we all are eager to find out. And that's why people are tuning in, because they want to know these stories, the Jim Tippett story and stuff like that. I mean, and this whole thing with Cornwallis. I mean, I really, like I said before, I had heard the name. I didn't know anything about the guy. And now you're coming on here teaching us what's going on with this guy. And you may end up finding some of the plunder that he took from people. If you can, I mean, that's awesome. That's great stuff.
Yeah, I really I like to think in the end, it's funny. I started making my videos because I hope to one day be the old guy that didn't remember his name, and I hope to maybe my daughter like sit me in the corner and plug my YouTube videos on as many times as she may have seen them over the course of her life. Just be like, sit there and just watch yourself.
Yeah.
So that's how all of this started. And I think the journey, wherever it goes, I think will for always be the exciting part, right?
Yes,
we never
exactly
want to put the stamp on the end.
No.
So we'll hope for that in the future, and see where the river takes us.
And pump that a little bit. Okay, you mentioned your YouTube channel, and I've watched several of the videos of you guys out metal detecting and stuff like that. And I honestly, I mean, folks are gonna see me doing the same thing at some point when I get out to Texas. Especially, I'm gonna be recording that entire thing out there, and so there's gonna be me and Gypsy and Donna and whoever else out there metal detecting, and what we find or don't find or whatever. I have a tendency to find a lot of pull tabs.
Yeah, I do too.
I get a lot of pull tabs from pop cans, but yeah. So your channel is Gone Digging.
Yeah. So if you want to find me out in the World Wide Web, you can go type in Gone Digging on Google, and you'll find me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We have a website up. If you're interested and need a metal detector, you could go over there and pick one up as well. So yeah, we're any place you may find your daily dose of social media. There we are. But for everybody who's stopping in and saying thank you for hanging out. Thanks to the Jeff Squared and the Lindas in the background managing the chat. These things aren't easy to put on. I've done a number of them myself. They take time, they take dedication, and to have such a professional, welcoming setup, you guys, my hat's off to you.
Oh, thank you so much. And speaking of hat, do you sell the hats? I seen you guys on the show. I got to buy a hat if you have them, or the shirt.
Hats are on order. That would been the number one standout thing. We're working on putting shirts on the website and doing all that stuff, but hats were demand through the roof. So we're going to get
the hoodie too going. I'm wearing.
Yeah,
I
got the hoodie, and
let us know when you get them in.
Oh, my man, somebody's there supporting Virginia right there. So
you betcha. I love it. I go down. I've been down to Harper's Ferry. I'm looking into the war, some of this had happened, and I'm also into the paranormal. So I go on paranormal investigations. I got a lot of gear for that too. So, and that's a hotbed for that kind of stuff down around there because of all the tragedies that happened. But yeah, I when I was younger, I worked at Olentangy Indian Caverns in Central Ohio, and I gave tours. And I was like 14, 15 years old, and I was giving tours down in the caverns. I loved them. I went here just one weekend. I decided I'm going to go check out, Luray Caverns. And I just took off for the weekend, went down there and visited, went to the tour and bought the shirt. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So yeah, I'm supporting Virginia today.
Yeah. Well, you guys make it down and you want to come treasure hunting, you always have an open invitation.
Oh my
around.
gosh. You know it, dude. You just said it right there. I'm coming. I'm going to be there.
Come on. We got plenty of places. We'll take you right into the heart of the American Civil War, and maybe we'll even find you a piece of Cornwallis treasure. Who knows?
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, okay. Well, it's on record that I'm going to be stopping by and meeting the Rosses out there in North Carolina, they're working on the dredge. I've already been invited there, so I am going, and he's got a place for me to park my fifth wheel. So I'll be there. And I'm going to swing by and have to see you too. So
there you go.
Thank you for the invitation.
You got a trip now.
I do. I'm going to make my way right up through there. So, wow, this has been fantastic, Matt. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and giving us this education and sharing with us your adventure and what you're doing here. And I really applaud your ethic on everything because you mentioned it a few times here tonight, talking about how you want to preserve things, you want to share this stuff. It's out there for everybody, and I applaud you for that. You're not one of these treasure hunters that's going to keep everything close at heart. I'm not going to share anything with anybody. It's all mine. It's mine. You have that ethic about you that I applaud that. So thank you so much for that. That's exactly what we need is more people to share what they find because it's all part of our history, right?
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you guys. Yeah,
thank you so very much. Jeff Babineau, thanks again for, I know, you got a few words in there tonight anyway. But thank you so much for co-hosting, and Linda and everybody. Thank you guys for doing everything you do to make this show possible. I really appreciate it a lot. So we'll let you get back. I know you had a time limit here tonight, but I really do appreciate it. Thanks, folks, for watching tonight. And like I said earlier, if you like the content of our show, give us a thumbs up. And I will put the link in the description of the show. I didn't have it yet, and I'm going to do it right now. I've got it up on my screen to put in the link to Matt's YouTube channel. You got to go check it out. He's got a lot of videos on there, and I've watched several of them. They're really cool. They have a great time out there collecting history. So check them out. I'll put the link in there for you guys all to check it out later on. Again, thanks for everybody being here tonight. We got more shows coming up next week. Curse of Oak Island, of course, on Wednesday night. Then we've got the guys that are out in Treasures in America, guys that are out searching for the Spanish.
Great dudes.
Yes, they are. And they're
great
coming
dudes,
on next Thursday night. Yeah. So they'll be with us on Thursday night next week. And then Friday night, we're going to be doing next week's Beyond Oak Island. And then Saturday, I got 4 shows to do next week. It's going to be a wild week. But anyway, so stay tuned for all of that, folks. We'll see you next time right here on the Curse of Oak Island Beyond live stream and J3906. Good night, everybody.